Hello and welcome to Believe a Shoe and Live. I'm Larry. And when I was thinking about doing another video, I wasn't thinking about doing a series on a book, but I was feeling there was a need to get away from my thoughts about the world issues and focus in on Yahweh and His scriptures. So I decided to do a book series on the book of Ruth. Keep in mind there are only 4 chapters in this book of Ruth, so I decided to have 4 videos, one for each chapter. I thought this book illustrates loyalty, kindness, and even bitterness in a way to help the remnant and how they should embrace it. I'm hoping many people will come to the conclusion that the older books and the scriptures are needed for us today, because many people listen to their own selfish desires and convince themselves it's okay to distort or even ignore Yahweh's commandments or His older books. Now let's set up this book in the time frame. The events in this book happened during the period of the Judges, most likely during the time of Gideon or sometime after that. Remember, the Israelites lived in various cycles of their own making by turning to pagan idols and pagan ways, and Yahweh's response to this was to send enemies, raiders, and even food famines. The raiders were the Midianites, desert nomads, who banded together to raid the Israelite crops and animals on a yearly basis. This may have also been the reason why Naomi's husband and her 2 children left to Moab, which is a kingdom on the east side of the Dead Sea. Some scholars believe fleeing instead of staying in the Promised Land was being disobedient to Yahweh. Now let's read all of chapter 1.
Ruth, chapter 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. They lived there about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited His people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So the 2 of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" she said to them, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite her daughter-in-law with her, who returned from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest.
Now that we've finished chapter 1, first we should know this book is about women and about Naomi. Let's keep that in mind while we are studying this book. Let's start with verse 2, where it states where they were from the tribe of Judah, and it's from the city of Bethlehem. Later they went to Moab, a small kingdom, because of hard times. While living there, Naomi's husband died, and she was left alone with only her 2 sons, and there is no reason given why he passed away. But as stated before, some believe it was God's judgment on them. 10 plus years later, Naomi's 2 sons also died and left Naomi's 2 daughter-in-laws as widows. This may have also been a judgment on Naomi and her sons, because they didn't leave the land of Moab and return to the land of Judah. This is all speculation on my part. Before we move on to verse 6, keep in mind Naomi was alone in the land of Moab, and being an older widow and had no male children to take care of her, and this being a male-dominated society, this was a death sentence in her mind. Now starting with verse 6, there is a glimmer of hope, because she heard that Yahweh restored his people of Judah again. So the Moabite people gave her food, and she went on her way with her 2 daughter-in-laws. Now let's go down to verse 8. I believe this verse is a turning point for Orpah, one of Naomi's daughter-in-laws. In verse 8 through 9, Naomi was telling her 2 daughter-in-laws to go back home and find husbands, and being Moabites themselves, this would not be too difficult. But they still not want to leave her. So she said something very interesting in verse 11. We read in verse 11, "But Naomi said, 'Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands?'" Naomi is talking about levirate marriage. We read this in Deuteronomy 25, verse 5 through 6. Now let's read Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 6. "If brothers are living together, and one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her, and fill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. The first son she bears shall carry on the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out of Israel." In other words, it's saying, if I had a brother and he was married and he dies without a male child, and I wasn't already married, I would be obligated to marry my sister-in-law, and the first son born of that marriage would belong to the brother's family. This doesn't really help Naomi, because she has no sons, no husband, and she's too old for childbearing. What is she to do? While traveling, we see in verse 13 that Naomi is extremely bitter, because she says, "Yahweh's hand has come against me." Now they all give a good cry. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and went back to Moab with her mother. Did Orpah make a good decision by putting her fate in a false deity and her family? This decision makes a good comparison for people today. Many people come so close to making a decision accepting God, the God of Israel, and his son Yeshua, but most people reject the path because it leads down a road they don't want to go. So most turn back to their families and churches and their own thoughts of religions and traditions. Why? Because it's easier and familiar to them and inherently tickles their ears. Now let's continue down to verse 16 to 17. We need to understand this is a covenant to Yahweh and Naomi. We all should get this idea, but let's look deeper into these words. Let's look at it as if you and me are making a covenant to Yahweh. First, let's read 16 to 18. The highlighted 6 parts are the covenant. But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your Elohim my Elohim. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May Yahweh do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And then Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her. She said no more. Okay, let's look at these 6 parts of the covenant. The first one in yellow, it reads, "For where you go, I will go." If you put Yahweh in place of Naomi, it reads kind of like this: Yahweh, where you go, I will go. Now we continue down to the blue part. Where you lodge, I will lodge. You can say, Yahweh, where you lodge, I will lodge. You continue down to the orange, where it says, your people shall be my people. In other words, Yahweh, your people shall be my people. And you continue down, your Elohim, my Elohim. In other words, Elohim, you're my Elohim, which is the green. We continue down to the purple part. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Yahweh, I will die with your people. Now we continue on to the 6th part. May Yahweh do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. Yahweh, hold on to you with an unwavering loyalty, even unto death. This covenant really boils down to mentally choosing and physically doing a lifestyle change to obey Yahweh. Now, continuing down to verse 19 through 22, they arrived in Bethlehem during the barley harvest, which is in the spring. And the women of the town saw her and were happy to see Naomi. But she said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Maria. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." Maria in Hebrew means bitterness. Years earlier, when she first left, now she's most likely thinking by leaving Bethlehem to Moab was the wrong decision because she lost her sons and her husband. Her understanding of this was that it was a judgment from Yahweh. Now that's all for now. The next video will be on chapter 2.